Books can create superheroes. I know this because I am one. Yeah, that's right. I'm a walking, talking black superhero. Now, I know what everyone's thinking right now. Yo, this dude think he's a Black Panther. Nah. However, I did grow up in a magical place called Chocolate City. Everyone do me a solid. Please do not look on your phones now to see where this is. Because tonight, I'm going to share with you how a single book transformed me into a superhero. But my story doesn't begin on planet Krypton. It doesn't involve radioactive spiders or even a police commissioner that would shine their bat signal in the air when they needed me to fight crime. My journey to the page began the night Johnny, my mother's boyfriend, pointed a gun at me and my mom. You see, Johnny, he was a bus driver, and when he wasn't driving, he drank. The uniform of a city worker created a tremendous amount of pride, and like most city workers in the 1980s, Johnny would wear this uniform everywhere he went. Putting it on, he felt that it instantly gained him the respect of others. Johnny would also wear this uniform most evenings in our two-bedroom apartment because he felt it earned him the right to drink. Except one Sunday night in particular. I can still recall, and I was very young at the time, but I can recall the screaming and yelling. I could hear it all the way from my room. Now, for those of you here tonight who are not well acquainted with black superheroes, when your mother's boyfriend is screaming and yelling at her, no matter how old you are, it is your duty to protect her. I'm going to kill you. That's what I heard when I walked into the living room and I saw Johnny standing there in full uniform with his arm outstretched, pointing a gun right at my mother's chest. His body position and demeanor explaining everything to me my young ears couldn't understand by their verbal argument. I just stood there in silence and clenched my fist until Johnny and our eyes met. Everyone in the room in that moment froze. Now my mom, seeing the opportunity, sprang up in what felt like one smooth motion, grabbed me, and we darted out the door of our apartment, barefoot and only in pajamas, directly across the hallway to our neighbors, the Freemans. Now, the Freemans, they weren't just ordinary neighbors, they were also pastors. My mom began to frantically yell and bang on their door, "Help me, please, Matthew." Mr. Freeman, a man of the cloth, he stood there looking at us, and then he promptly closed the door in our faces. Now, in this moment, Johnny had made his way into the hallway, and he was fuming mad. He angrily threw us back into the apartment. However, he was smart enough to not bring the gun with him in the hallway, because as anyone here tonight who has ever lived in an apartment complex, you are fully aware by this moment, there are hundreds of sets of eyes peering out their peepholes to see what the commotion is all about. Once back in the apartment, my mother, all 5'4" of her, knew she had to fight to save our lives. Now again, I'm not sure how well acquainted everyone is with black superheroes, but when your mother's boyfriend threatens the life of her child, she will pull from a place of love, a superhuman strength that I do not possess a strong enough command of the English language to explain here tonight. It was using this newfound strength from love that my mom was able to even the score with Johnny. Now, at one point in the struggle, Johnny ended up on top of my mom, one hand around her throat, the other on the gun. My mom, now with both hands on the butt of the gun, drove it right in his chest, right below his name tag, and proceeded to pull the trigger 5 times. What my mom was unaware of in the moment, however, is that Johnny had actually never loaded the gun. The gun dropped to the ground, and for the second time that evening, everyone in the room just froze. What awoke us from our daze this time was the sound of police sirens. Oh my God, how am I going to explain this to the cops? What's going to happen to Matthew? At a mere 22 years old, my mom, in the moment, her only concern was what would happen to her only child. Again, seeing an opportunity, my mom grabbed me. This time, we bolted completely out of our garden-style apartment complex, still barefoot and only in pajamas, in the middle of a very cold November night. Our new destination, to the 7-Eleven located directly across the street. It was there that we met a man whose name I'll probably never know, but will forever be grateful for. He could sense the urgency in my mom's tone and agreed us to hide us in the back supply closet. It was there in the dark that we sat and we just held each other, tighter than we've ever held each other before, as we awaited for our help to arrive that evening, which came in the form of my Aunt Lisa and a close family friend, Shirley. So it's at this point in the story where most superheroes, their story end. With me and this gorgeous woman whose smile can light up this entire room, living happily ever after. Unfortunately, in real life, stories don't end so cleanly. You see, my grandparents stepped in where the cops never had a chance to, taking me and sending my mom back to that 2-bedroom apartment on Monday. By Wednesday, Johnny and my mom had married. The next day, Thursday, that was Thanksgiving. And we all just sat around the dinner table and didn't say a word of what had just happened a few days prior. I quickly learned that the dinner table wasn't the appropriate place for such discussions, and school wasn't much better. Perfect grades and perfect attendance didn't really seem reasonable in a world where I learned very early that there were no perfect people. Sticks and stones break bones, I get that. But words don't hurt? What if the words were, I never want to go back to that 2-bedroom apartment again? I wonder if that hurt my mom. Sticks and stones also don't cover thoughts. And the thoughts of abandonment that I felt, that really hurt me. So I went to the library in search of other superheroes with stories similar to my own. Unfortunately, that section didn't exist. Approaching high school, I searched the school hallways for friends who had similar superhero stories and who had also learned to never share them. Because if it ever got into the school that you were a superhero, it would be all anyone ever talked about. So through partial narratives, sports, and the things a visit to one's home you just can't hide, I met my crew. A poet, a Renaissance man, a musician, a tap-dancing offensive lineman, and the only freshman in the entire school with a full beard that connected. Yeah, that dude was a man. It was in these group of young men that I finally had a place to share my story. The story that I was so scared would define me at such an early age. Fast forward into 2016, and then this happened. You see that poet I just told you about? He became a writer. Johnny in the book became my dad. My mom became Terry. The 7-Eleven became Mr. Charles's Bodega. And I became Ghost. My superhero story. The same story as of 3 years ago I maybe told a handful of people. The same story that in here tonight I'm sure made a few people very uncomfortable to hear. Spent weeks on top of the New York Times bestsellers list. Look, I'm a 37-year-old father of two very handsome boys. Danelle, my beautiful wife, and I are raising them just right up the road from here. It was until recently that I thought this is what being a superhero is all about. Besting your own demons. However, it wasn't until I picked up this middle grade novel, which truthfully, y'all, is only the 5th book I've ever read cover to cover, that I learned that superheroes are not superheroes for only saving themselves. Superheroes don't exist in a vacuum. Yo, I'm so thankful for Jason Reynolds, Angie Thomas, Jacqueline Woodson, Kwame Alexander for fighting to get stories like these to the page. I am so thankful for all of the teachers and librarians who are fighting to build out these sections of their libraries. The sections filled with the stories of kids who look just like me, who are now able to see the power of their narrative on page. I am so grateful for all of the students I've met in connection to this book, many of whom have superhero stories similar to my own, for showing me in a school setting where it's still a bit risky to share that all superheroes really need is just a bit of courage and the unwavering support of a few friends to make a difference. So friends, we've reached the point in the discussion. I mean, this is TED after all, ideas worth sharing. But superheroes aren't superheroes for their ideas. Now I can sit up here this evening and ask that everyone support the creation of more diverse books. I won't do that. However, when I'm done talking and you're pulling out your smartphones to see where Chocolate City is, you could also begin to follow We Need More Diverse Books online. Now, I could also stand up here tonight and ask that you support your local library, but I won't do that either. However, the next time you're on the internet, and you happen to stumble across the American Library Association's webpage, there you will find legislation to increase funding to your local libraries. About a month ago, my mom and I, for the first time in over 30 years, had a discussion of all the events that happened the night I just shared with you. Now, because I can remember everything so vividly, I just always assumed I was much older. My mom shared with me that night, I was only 3 years old. And they never got me help because they just figured I would forget and I wouldn't remember anything. So here's my ask. This is my bat signal that I'm shining in everyone's direction right now. I simply ask, as you share an uncomfortable story with a young person, then honestly answer all of the uncomfortable questions I'm sure will follow. Let them know that their heroes are not perfect. But guess what? They don't need to be either. Thank you.